Un séjour, mon Dieu.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Wednesday, October 25th, our regular Board of County Commissioners public meeting. And we'll start with John, any additions or deletions for today?
Thanks, George. We'd like to make one addition to the agenda today, an executive session at the end for the purposes of discussing property acquisitions and stream protection strategies.
Okay.
And we'll have that sheet ready for you at the end of the meeting.
Great, thanks. Okay, now we're going to go on to public comments. Anybody wishing to make a comment that's not on the agenda? Joe? The Crowleys, and then we've got Janice.
Joe Wells, Castle Creek Caucus. I'd like to comment on the housing proposal at 488 Castle Creek Road. The site is adjacent to two affordable housing projects, Castle Ridge and the dormitory style housing at Merle. Both of these are two-story buildings. The proposal for 488 Castle Creek Road is a four-story building. The density of the project after slope reduction is an astounding 51 units per acre. I'm coming to you because you are also, the Aspen Area Community Plan is one of your plans, as well as the city. That document states, we continue to support an urban growth boundary where density is concentrated in the commercial core and gradually tapers to the UGB boundary. This site is within 75 feet of the UGB boundary and also the city boundary. The UGB was first adopted in 2000 in the 2000 AACP and provides an important tool against sprawl. Additional densities within the commercial core should result in preservation of rural lands. That's the only reference I'll trouble you with, but I would just urge you to weigh in on this project. It's right at the boundary of the UGB. Just adjacent to that, the zoning in the county is AR10, 1 unit per 10 acres. I'm not opposed to housing on this site. I just think it's a very dense project, given the language of the AACP. Great,
thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Do we? I'm looking at Cindy, our ComDev director. Is this something that we would want to make a comment on as a referral agency?
Cindy Hubin, Community Development Director. Certainly, we have not received a request for a referral from the city on this yet, but I will go check on that and get back to you.
Great, thank you.
Cindy.
Thanks.
Next for public comment.
Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Jim Crowley Jr., and I'm here on behalf of my dad, Jim Crowley Sr. He's going to be 99 this Sunday, so everyone calls him Cowboy, and I want you to know we're a 7th generation family in the Frying Pan River Valley in Thomasville. Everyone here been to Thomasville?
Yeah. Yep.
So let me just tell you, paint you a quick picture of Thomasville. You come into Thomasville, and on the left-hand side is my cousin's piece of property, and next to that is his another cousin's piece of property, and next to that is 7 acres that my Uncle Bud used to own, and next to that is my piece of property and my sister's, and pretty much we are the town of Thomasville, right in the heart of Thomasville. So my point is that we've been there a long time, and we're not going anywhere. We're committed to Thomasville, and I mentioned that 7 acres that used to be my Uncle Bud's place because a long time ago he sold that piece of property, and about 10 years ago we were able to buy it back. We wanted to get it in the family, and we wanted to split it into a couple more lots for other family members. Well, you know what that means to Pitkin County. It means subdivision. And not only does it mean subdivision, it means GMQS. Not too long after we bought that piece of property, we started dealing with Pitkin County Community Development to see if we could split it. And so I'm really not sure how long the GMQ process has been in effect, but I'm here to tell you that the town of Thomasville has not changed in my lifetime. As a matter of fact, we may have less today in Thomasville than we had 60 years ago. We have no gas station. We have no restaurants. We have no motels. Nothing's there anymore. And my point is that we probably don't need anything in Thomasville to keep our growth down. We probably don't need GMQS because anyone who's been there basically knows that we have nothing there. We do have a fire station, and the Crowley family has been a major part of the volunteer fire department since the beginning. We've been members of the Frying Pan Valley Caucus since the beginning. My sister Lee is the postmaster in Meredith. So my point is that we're pretty much community development in Thomasville. You're probably wondering where I'm going with all of this, but I want you to know that over the last 10 years in working with community development, it's been virtually impossible to get enough points through the GMQS system to divide our piece of property. We had to hire a water attorney to do a water augmentation plan. We had to hire a professional water engineer registered in the state of Colorado to prepare a report to demonstrate adequate water actually exists. We've had to hire a professional planner, Grafton Smith, to help us through this process because if you don't, you're not getting anywhere. Well, to top it all off, last year we were told by the county attorney that we actually have to go and get well permits. Is that the craziest thing you've ever heard? We have to go get well permits for a subdivision that might not ever happen. We still might not get the subdivision. So if we don't get the subdivision, what do we do with those well permits? So I'm here to voice my opinion today about the process and to let you know that I think it's sometimes unreasonable. I want you to remember that Thomasville is not Aspen. It never has and never will be. And I also want you to remember me, and I want you to remember my dad. Because if for some reason we can't get this crazy so-called subdivision to satisfy the crazy stipulations of the GMQS, we might be back here to visit you. And we might be back here for your advice and for your suggestions on how we might get this whole thing done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sure, as noted, our staff from Community Development is here, so they've heard that, and they'll let us know what the status is.
So can we get a memo or something back how do you want to deal with it, George? I'd like to follow up on it somehow.
Suzanne.
Yeah, that'd be great, Suzanne.
Thanks, George.
I apologize for my voice. I think the biggest issue that I understand for the application has been the requirement that at subdivision you have to demonstrate your legal water rights at conceptual subdivision, which is the first step in our subdivision process. So for them to even, when you come in for conceptual subdivision, you also apply at the same time for the growth management allotment to create new lots to subdivide the property. And so that has been, the big hang up, and obviously time, money, and all of those things that Jim mentioned to even get started in the process. But that was a requirement. I guess just a couple things. That requirement came into the code in 2006 with the new code when it was specified that that be provided at conceptual subdivision. And then the other point about, I guess, growth management, prior to 2000, growth management, the frying pan was exempt from growth management fully, as was the crystal. And in 2000, that change was made where they were brought under the growth management system that the rest of the county had been under since 1978. So So I know Mike has been meeting with and, working with Crowley's on this for a bunch of years. But definitely there, the requirements of the code that, are complicated in order to get started in that process.
All right, thank you.
Can I just ask a real quick question? I remember I remember when we changed this, it was a very difficult decision, but we kind of required proof of wet water because we had issues where people said they had water and water really wasn't there. But what about the well permits? I don't remember us asking them to have a well permit in hand.
The requirement of the code is proof of adequate water rights in the form of a final judgment and decree of water rights. So that's the language in the code. I'm not sure about the actual.
Or alternatively, a permit.
Or a permit, I guess a
So
permit.
either
would
or.
serve.
So
and
that
that's obtained through the state engineer. Yes.
Right.
I
Yeah.
will tell you that we
No,
did
no,
have
no,
that.
no, no, no.
Sorry.
Yeah, we're not going to get into a whole discussion
Just
here.
if we could have
just
a
want to get an
follow-up.
update, that's all. Okay, thank
what
you.
we can do.
All right, yeah, there is a process that is in place. It doesn't matter if you live in Aspen, in Redstone, in Meredith, in Emma. There is a process that needs to be in place for everybody. And so we'll just have to work through it. But I want to thank Mr. Jim Jr. and Mr. Jim Sr. Happy birthday coming up, 99.
George said happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you for coming to town
Thank you.
from Thomasville.
We'll see what we can follow up with staff.
Okay, we're going to have an update from our clerk and recorder, Janice Voss-Caudell.
Thank you for allowing me the time. I wanted to share with you, as well as the community, the logistics for the election that's happening now, and then answer any questions that you think the community might want to know that I forget. Ballots went out last week, so look for your ballot in the mail. You should have gotten it. If you haven't gotten your ballot, go online to pickinvotes.com. You can enter your registration record. It's on the in the state registration system. Look and see where we mailed your ballot. If we mailed it in the wrong place, update it, and we will turn around and mail you, void the original wherever it went, and mail you your ballot immediately. You can do that up until next Monday, which is the 30th. You can do everything online, and we'll accommodate your needs, all right? So if you received your ballot in the mail, what's on the ballot this year? So this year, there's not a state issue or a county issue. It's a smaller ballot. We have the Aspen School District races. We have CMC races. We have CMC issue, a tax issue. We have Snowmass Village has a broadband question. City of Aspen has two measures. One is a tax for nicotine, and the other is a bond issue for purchasing land, down in Woody Creek. We also have the Carbondale Fire District asking for a tax increase, and the last is Starwood is asking for a bond issue to build a fire station up in Starwood. So wherever you live determines what you get to vote on. Everyone within the county should receive a ballot. Again, they were dropped last week. Go online if you haven't received it. Review your record to see where we sent it. Now, if you haven't received it, you can also stop in our office. We'll hand one over to you over counter. How do you return your ballot? You can either return it, and it is one stamp this year because it is a smaller ballot. It's on the cusp with one or two stamps. Put one stamp on it. We do have two drop-off locations 24/7 with surveillance cameras, and that is, one is in Snowmass Village at the town hall, right outside the door, the entrance. The other is at Basalt Town Hall, right in the parking area outside the building. Or you can drop it off at our office, or
And where's your office?
our office is at 501 East Hyman in the Ute City building. Right inside the atrium is our office on the main floor, right next to Juice. Or you can drop it off during early voting. So we have one voter service center this year, and that's at the Aspen Jewish Community Center. Starts next Monday, the 30th. So it's one full week before Election Day, Monday through Friday, and the Monday before Election Day. We're open from 8:30 to 4:30 for early voting, and then, of course, on Election Day, 7 to 7. Also, we are open on Saturday, November 4th, from 10 to 2, if you're in town on the weekend. You can, it's a one-stop shop. It's a one-stop shop at the VSPC. I can see VSPC, but no, not one-stop shop. You can drop off your ballot at the VSPC, the Aspen Jewish Community Center. You can pick up a replacement mail ballot if you want. You can register to vote if you've lived in Colorado for 22 days or more. You can update your voter registration record, or you can vote in person right there and cast your ballot. So you can do anything you want if you're driving through Aspen and want to stop at the Aspen Jewish Community Center. I would encourage everyone who's received their ballot to turn it around and get it back to us so we can process it. So on election night, shortly after 7 o'clock, we upload the outcomes. More ballots returned, more ballots in the initial outcome. We upload it to the Secretary of State's election night reporting system. You can be at your party, you can be at home, you can be at wherever you want to be, and go to pickinvotes.com. We will have on the main page a link to the election night reporting system so you can see the outcomes shortly after 7 o'clock on election night. We are also required by law to upload. We continue processing until the end of the night, but we are required by law to upload a second upload of outcomes shortly after 9 o'clock, and then at the end of the evening when we're finished.
So, George, Rachel had a really good comment last night about because of the bridge closure and the length of the mail delivery, so people should really, suggest that they go to a drop box if they can, the sooner the better, or mail them definitely the sooner the better.
Get them back early because our mail goes to Glenwood for sorting and then up to Aspen. So anything that's dropped in Aspen goes down to Glenwood and back up here. And then it's distributed within our county from the Aspen post office, Snowmass, Meredith, the various locations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, the sign on the post office door says that if you mail something after 1:30, it won't get there. I mean, it won't be going out that day. So, you normally think if it's there by 5, it's going out, but it's not. So you could lose a day or two in transit. That's the main point because of the bridge. And I just wanted to kind of share a small story. I turned 57 on October 6th, and I had to renew my driver's license. And then about a week ago, I got 2 ballots in the mail. And that's because I corrected the spelling on my first name, Rachael instead of EL, which is what my first grade teacher taught me to spell it. And so I went by the clerk's office immediately, and they said, well, that's simply because of the voter registration update through your driver's license, and, we would have already voided your other ballot should have come in. But it was like, for a minute, I was like, oh, wow, what's going on? And I was like, oh, I'm going to the clerk's office right away so nobody thinks there's any hanky-panky. But I just wanted to compliment you on the efficiency. The staff knows exactly what's going on. They're able to look at it and tell me this is the one to vote, that the one's already kind of voided in our system or will be when it comes in. And it's just your efforts for voter turnout and participation are massive, your whole office, and they all deserve that credit for that.
They do an excellent job. I'm really proud of them. And we've come a long way the last 10 years with our technology, new rules, et cetera. So more has changed in the last 10 years, the previous 30 years combined in elections. You brought up 2 points. I just want to remind people that if you go online to pickinvotes.com and go into your voter registration record, you can track the date your ballot was mailed. You can track when it's received in our office, and you can track when we've accepted your ballot, meaning we've looked at the signature on record with the signature on the ballot, and we've determined it matches, therefore it will be cast. So you can look and see whether it's rejected or accepted. The other last thing I want to comment is 7 o'clock on election night, that's it. We're closing the drop boxes. We close the service centers. We do not accept anything else after that time. So 7 o'clock election night. Okay? Everybody, thank you for your...
Great. Thanks, Janice.
Thank you, Janice. Okay, anybody else wishing to make a public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment and bring it for commissioner comments. Greg?
I'm good.
I just want everybody to look at my new water bottle. This is the one of the perks you get if you visit the West Springs Hospital in Grand Junction. It's the psychiatric hospital that takes a lot, and well, actually takes any case from Western Colorado and even a few from the Front Range for psychiatric help or alcohol and drug problems. They have a capital campaign going. They came and saw us back in January, I think it was. They were trying to raise $17 million. They are $13 million toward that goal. So they've got $4 million left to raise. And I'm going to do my best to introduce them to everyone in Aspen and this valley who could possibly help. So that's one of my missions. And as a result, they offered me this great water bottle. I'm very, very proud of it. I gave it to my daughter, but she didn't take it to school today.
So you snuck it out.
It's just great to see that they're getting a great response and that I think we're going to be able to help them move forward. And I know it's our budget season, but it's also capital campaigns for Mountain Valley Health as well. And we're probably going to be hearing from them soon, or at least I will. I'm going to go talk to them next. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Rachel?
Well, I want to really thank you, Greg, for bringing that up and the efforts you're showing there. And just to add a little further definition, there's only one overnight facility on the entire West Slope for that type of psychiatric care. And they end up both with individuals who are self-committing or other people committing, but also from the jail populations. And we all know that a jail is not the right place to treat mental illness or mental health problems. The other key element is the children's area, the adolescents.
Right.
And we're just seeing more and more issues with that when you have suicidal kids, you have kids who have a hard time dealing with things in broken homes. So this is a tremendous need. They often are not able to take people and have to say, no, keep them in your jail, no, maybe next week a bed will open up. And so they're responding to the demands and needs of the Western Slope. I think that's critical.
Right. If I can add one last thing on that, is that the average number of beds per 100,000 people in the U.S. is something like 30 psychiatric hospital beds per 100,000 people, and Western Colorado has 6. So, and Colorado in general, I think, is closer to maybe 20. So the entire state has a dearth of facilities to handle these people. Thus, we end up storing them in our jails, which is unfortunate. So we're going to try to fix some of that.
Great, good job.
Thank you. Patty?
Yeah, I did want to remind everybody that Friday, October 27th, from 5:30 to 7:30 is Come Rock the House at Belly Up. It's a fundraiser to support Simi Hamilton and Noah Hoffman for the 2018 World Cup and Olympic year. It's a great opportunity to meet the athletes, their families, their support systems, and to help fund them. They get very little funding from the United States Olympic teams for the cross-country events that these two participate in. They're both incredible young men. I've known them their entire lives. So I really hope that people come out to Belly Up this Friday night, the 27th, from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. and help support Simi and Noah.
Good job.
Thank you. Anybody else? Public comments? Oh, commissioner comments, I meant. Seeing none, we'll move on to our agenda. Consent action item is the minutes of the regular meeting of October 11th.
I would move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, next are consent action items, single reading. The first is a resolution appointing citizen board members.
I would make a motion to approve for discussion's sake.
I'll second.
Okay, we'll just take these one at a time. Okay, so citizen board members, Rachel?
Thank you. We have Chelsea Clark, who would be appointed to Planning and Zoning, Cliff Weiss for Planning and Zoning, Ken Newbecker for Healthy Rivers and Streams, and then renewing applicants are Bill Yoakum, Healthy Rivers and Streams, and Ellie Taylor, Healthy Rivers and Streams. And we'd just like to thank all of our citizen volunteers for all the work that they do, kind of sorting through the issues and offering suggestions and solutions before those items get to us.
Great, thanks. Any further comments or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Next is a petition for abatement or refund of taxes submitted by the Roaring River Ranch LLC.
Oh, Larry's going to do this one, or Jeanette?
Well, it's just a consent action item.
Oh,
Yeah, it's mostly if you guys have questions.
So
okay.
I will have a question, but I'm waiting for a motion.
I'll move to approve the petition for abatement and refund of taxes.
I'll second.
Second, great, thank you. So Larry, looking at this, the point is that we're changing the classification from a vacant lot to a residential lot. It's an adjoining lot, and which means it's a change in their tax structure. My question is, so it's now classified as one lot in its entirety?
No, there are different assessment rates for residential land versus vacant land. And so we're not doing anything to change the legal description of this property. It's still Lot 1 of the Aspen Village River Home subdivision, but although there are no residential improvements on the property, because it is being used in conjunction with the adjoining improved lot, it receives the benefit of the residential classification. So there's nothing happening as far as the legal description or the rights associated with the property. It's just changing the classification for tax purposes.
So even though it's being utilized by the property next door, this lot could still be sold separately and then developed aside from the current lot?
Theoretically, yes.
And so how is it being utilized then for next door?
This property is part of a larger overall compound. The same owner, this is the property that's directly across from Aspen Village. There's a big barn out in the field, and I want to say there are probably 5 or 6 properties all owned by the same entity. They use the entire property as if it's an estate type property. For example, they've got a common irrigation system for the property in its entirety. They maintain the landscaping. There are water features that run across property boundaries. There's a landscape trail that leads from the Jerabah's homestead property kind of down across the river, across this property, back over to the main house, which is on Lot 2, I believe. And so the entire property is used more or less as a single entity. And so this property falls under that umbrella, I guess.
All right, thanks. Does anybody else have a question? Any other discussion?
Nope.
We have a motion, we have a second, then all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Larry.
Thanks, Larry.
For the explanation.
Okay, we're going to move on to our individual consideration items. The first is a resolution to adopt the Pitkin County Climate Action Plan.
Thank you all.
Thank you for
Thank you
coming.
very much.
Hope you make it back to Thomasville safely. It's a long ways up there.
Of course.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Sarah Gruen from CORE and I are here to talk about the adoption of the Climate Action Plan for Pitkin County as an organization. And as you know, in the future, we'll be talking about a regional plan that CORE is going to help us put together with everyone in Pitkin County. But the main topics today are the adoption of the plan, which you saw at work session very recently. I think it was October the 3rd. And just a few points that we wanted to make sure and clarify with you are on page 2 under the key discussion items. Basically, that we wanted to confirm with the board that the focus is on reducing emissions with Pitkin County as an organization and phasing this climate action plan. And that we will be bringing back other partners to work with this as we move forward with our evolution of our first internal plan. The plan is intentionally a brief plan. It talks about our policy and focuses on specific actions from each one of the departments that are part of the plan, and that it's a fundamental plan that we are gearing towards emissions reduction. However, at this time, and it goes into another goal, is that we're not putting forth a target goal in this plan due to some of the inequities of how we measure greenhouse gases for Pitkin County as an organization versus the community as a whole, and that in fact we'll be coming back at some point, hopefully with something that is more tangible from a goal-setting perspective with the County Building and Maintenance Department with some specific building and facility goals. But for now, that we are targeting, looking at a larger target goal for the region-wide in Pitkin County when we get started on our regional plan. So those are the clarifications we just wanted to make with you, and hope that you will adopt the plan with today's resolution, which is attached.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
I have,
Yes.
I agree with the key discussion points on this, on your memo, but on the, as far as the resolution, just have some questions. On number 8, you say you worked with the 3-year work plans for the following department and entities, and then under the next section, which I've already lost, under 10, it says the Board of County Commissioners encourages all departments to fulfill. So we're saying at one time we worked with these specific departments, but we want all of the departments. Okay, just want to make sure we weren't missing that. Should it be the departments we've worked with to fulfill, or all departments?
Right. At the last work session, the board encouraged all departments.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. There were some other language issues, but in rereading it over, the flow, seemed to be okay. But I think you guys did a great job. Not an easy project, and I think it's a good start for us to move forward on.
I would just like to acknowledge CORE for their great work. They are working not only with Pitkin County, but they've been working with Snowmass Village, Town of Basalt, perhaps some other entities as well. And the idea that CORE is sort of taking the lead on helping all the municipalities and counties to help look at the inventories and help develop a climate action plan throughout the Roaring Fork Valley, with the goal overall is to have them sort of overlap each other and have hopefully a consistent policy, so we in the Roaring Fork Valley can all strive to lower our greenhouse gas emissions and strive for the CORE's goal, which would be 100% renewables. So thank you, Sarah, for all your work on this. Steve?
I was thinking about several things. One, I think it's really good that the county is doing this, because having Pitkin County departments be striving towards achieving these goals and fulfilling them would set a good example to other people in the community to try to improve their energy efficiency and do things differently. There's also, to me, a real sense of urgency to do all of the above absolutely as soon as possible, because we are really already past the tipping point in terms of CO2 and methane being emitted into the atmosphere, and temperatures are rising much faster than was anticipated. This is especially happening in the northern regions of the northern hemisphere, that the temperatures there have risen a lot more than they have where we are here. So I would like to get a broader climate action plan involving the public as soon as possible. And I'm anxiously awaiting to have the City of Aspen Climate Action Plan, which will be rolled out to, I think, to the City Council sometime in November. And Ashley can fill us in on that.
December 12th. December 12th, we'll be presenting the final climate action plan to City Council. And I just want to commend the staff's work as well as the board's work in preparing a climate action plan for the county. This is actually, I think it's a really great leadership move, and actually inspires the city to do the same by setting some goals for our own internal departments, because we often focus a lot on the community. And so I think it's great that you're starting internally, setting that standard, and then I can use that to leverage my council to do a little bit more internally as well as support the community. So we'll be presenting the full community-wide climate action plan to City Council on December 12th. And Steve, you were on the advisory board for that, so we'll be extending an invite. So hopefully you can attend the presentation and speak to the value of that. Thank you.
And the city of Aspen has set a reduction goal, as have many other communities in Colorado who are part of the CC4CA group. The city of Aspen goal for reduction is 80% reduction by 2050, based on the 2004 baseline data. And something we would have to figure out is, what are we going to use for our baseline if we set a goal? We might set it on the 2014 report, which is part of this, or we could use the 2004 baseline that the city is using, and that's something that you might be thinking about, what would be the way forward on that.
Okay, anybody else have any comments or questions? Rachel?
I was just going to say, I think that this is a very important move. I appreciate all the work that's gone into it, because there still seems to be an awful lot of climate denial out there. And I just had a little bit of a refresher on that this morning, where a Cole County member of Club 20 sent an email out and said, how come Club 20 endorsed the Xcel Energy plan of closing the Comanche plants? And there it was, a letter supporting that. And others have immediately jumped in to say, how did that letter go out? And our staffer said, well, it was based on our past policy resolutions, and these are things that we can support equally. And so those coal counties are like, no, they're not. That takes money out of our pockets. And there's just a lot of climate denial that's out there, despite the changes we're seeing. And just yesterday, another kind of small story, real quick, and I appreciate the time. I read that Narragansett Bay in Rhode Island, which I have vacationed with my boyfriend there before, they were noting the climate change differences, and through the EPA, they had done studies on how this is going to affect everything from the bluefish and the water temperatures and the fisheries and the estuaries and everything. And they were presenting those results this week at a larger forum. And the EPA barred the 3 scientists who had done the original work from attending or presenting their results. And so we have to take action individually and as communities in the face of this until perhaps times change and people recognize the value of science again. Thank you.
Greg?
Once again, I want to thank you for your hard work on this. It's exciting that we're moving forward with it. I want to encourage your staffs to be as forthright and honest about what they think we should be doing, and present that so the entire community understands that we're going to move forward with this. And I also want to encourage people in the audience and citizens of our community to understand that we take this very seriously, and that anytime I hear about any sort of new development or anything like that, I want to hear about climate mitigation, or at least a sense of where they're going with energy use, because this is important for generations to come. So whether we're talking about the airport or we're talking about a new development somewhere, anything has an aspect of climate mitigation, energy mitigation that we should be considering, and I want to make sure no one hesitates to bring that forward. Thank you.
Steve?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution of the Board of County Commissioners of Pitkin County adopting the 2017 Pitkin County Climate Action Plan.
I'll second that.
Great, and again, great work from CORE, and great work, Cindy, from your department and all the departments. There's a lot of time and effort went into this. We have many work sessions, so good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All in favor?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our first readings. These are set for public hearings on November 1st. First is a resolution authorizing the Pitkin County Office of Emergency Management.
You skipped
I
one,
think we
George.
missed one.
All I have on my sheet is individual consideration items.
There's B.
Resolution endorsing and joining the compact of Colorado.
Oh, okay, thank you for catching that.
It was
So
worded
this is just a
on the agenda.
consideration item. We have resolution endorsing and joining the compact of Colorado communities. That follows perfectly after the climate action plan. Sorry, I missed that.
Right. Again, Cindy Hubin, Community Development, and I'm here with Ashley Pearl from the city of Aspen. And last May, several of you attended Mayor Scadron's initiative to create the Compact of Colorado Communities, which he was inspired to do so after his trip to Paris with the Paris Climate Action Talk. Worldwide, and came back and said, let's try to do this for Colorado and for the Colorado communities. And with that, we were asked if we wanted to join the Colorado Communities Compact, and we have this before you today to formally consider joining the compact. And Ashley's here to answer any questions that might come up. There are currently 19 communities around the state that have joined as a result of the meeting last 21 as of now with the meeting last May. So we're here to ask you if you would like to consider joining. We did sign that we would like to join at that meeting in May. And so this is the formality of that once we understood more of the organization and its direction. And that's what we're here for today. So you have a resolution before you. And Ashley can explain some of the details about what the compact means and what we as a community will get out of that agreement.
Okay, Ashley?
Great. Good afternoon, I believe, yes. So I was just looking at Commissioner Newman's signature on a board that I have in my office from last May that said he would bring this to the board and discuss whether or not it seemed like a benefit to the county to join the compact. So I was just looking at your signature this morning, and
But I did bring it to the board. I did my duty.
I thought about bringing it, but as of this morning, we have 21 communities that have joined the compact. We have 5 counties, and all the rest are cities. And we have formally also organized the compact, so we have an administrator and a couple of staff members working for the compact, and there's been one steering committee meeting to date that has gotten together. That's because most of the thing that Commissioner Newman signed said that we would do it before September 30th. The Aspen City Council did it on September 30th, so don't worry that you're a little bit behind. But just so you know, there has been one steering committee meeting already, and the compact is off and running, and I'm really excited as a member of it so that we're not administering it anymore, but about the benefits that we're going to get. So the first thing that we're going to get is in January, we're holding a symposium for all compact members in partnership with the governor's office to kick off the governor's climate action plan. So this symposium will be in Denver. It's open to the public on day 1, and then day 2 is an opportunity just for compact members to work with the governor's office to make a plan for the next 2 years moving forward on how the state can support local climate action. So I think that that's a really amazing opportunity that we get through joining and being members of this, is direct access to not just the people doing this work at the state and federal levels, but also the resources, including funding. So by joining the compact, we open up a lot of opportunities for both of our governments to get funding, to get local attention for the local work we're doing here, and then to partner with all these other communities to make sure that the actions we do here are more meaningful because they're at a larger scale. So I think that that's one of the biggest benefits. The second is that by joining, Cindy and the rest of her staff get access to all sorts of free trainings. So right now it seems like trainings, that's not that exciting. But one of the things we're finding is that boards across the state like yours are setting climate action goals, adopting climate action plans, and then this lovely lady here is off to go implement those. And that takes a lot of expertise, a lot of capacity, and we need to make sure that we build that capacity within staff so that your wishes actually become reality. So one of the things you get through the compact is these free trainings for land use planners, engineers, communication specialists, all on how to do local climate action work within their scope of their current job. So it means that not every city and county has to go out and hire a climate action specialist. You can actually do climate action through your existing staff as long as they get the right training and resources, and the compact's going to provide that. So I think attendance at this January event is a really great thing, and then overall getting a lot of these resources that are available through the compact are well worth joining. And then I think as the city of Aspen, we would be really excited to have a united front here in the Roaring Fork Valley of Pitkin County, City of Aspen. And I was just looking at the list. Basalt did formally join, as well as Snowmass. Carbondale has told us they're not going to join because they're weren't able to get it into the 2018 budget soon enough, and they feel a little bit stretched with their different climate initiatives, but they're going to consider it for the future year.
So one of the questions that came up earlier when we first discussed this, Ashley, was is this a duplication of our membership with CC4C? CC4A.
CC4C.
And maybe for us or for the public, you could explain the differences between the two organizations and how our memberships are separate in terms of the benefits.
I'm happy to explain how I see it. So CC4CA, the Colorado Communities for Climate Action, was established last year and has 14 members. The membership dues are quite steeper. And what it is a true policy lobbying organization. So CC4CA really kicks into gear when the state capital session starts, so here at the end of the year, and goes through May. That's our really busy time. And CC4CA funds actually go to pay for a lobbyist who is at the state capitol pretty much every day, understanding what's happening at the state capitol and how it might impact our towns and our climate goals. And then our lobbyist comes back to us as a group and alerts us of things that are going in either direction according to our policy agenda. So it is very much an advocacy, let's have a voice, a collective voice at the state capitol on climate action from local governments. And that is its focus. And I think that it's really critical that city governments and county governments have that voice and are active. So I think CC4CA filled a much needed hole in the climate action sphere of the state. But at the same time that we need to go and share our voice at the state capitol, if we show up and we haven't done any local action, then our voice doesn't mean much, right? And so I always say local governments need to always do two things. One, make sure that our own house is in order and we're doing aggressive local action to reduce climate change. And then secondly, we need to share our voice at the state and federal levels. And we need two separate organizations to do that because they're very different resources and expertise. So the City of Aspen looks at CC4CA as our policy group. We go to them just for policy measures, and we really rely on them to share our voice in conjunction with the other voices. The compact will be much more locally focused on getting us the resources we need to do local action here at home. So that's how I see it. I don't know how you. No.
So as you mentioned, there's the compact's going to have a symposium in Denver in January, and part of that symposium will be to work with the governor's staff to develop a climate action plan for the state. So then the nexus of that will then go to CC4CA to push that plan forward?
You know, it's
or
interesting.
Support that plan forward?
The governor has specified that he does not want advocacy groups at this symposium. They would like the state climate action work to be a lot more locally focused and on the ground focused and not as much policy oriented. So the symposium in January will not have a loud policy voice. And I think that is really indicative of where the governor's office is right now. So I think it speaks to the need to have these two different organizations because the governor's office wasn't really willing to work with CC4CA because they weren't willing to work in that policy space quite yet. So we're really thankful that they are willing to work with the compact as kind of a more entry-level, slower way to get involved with local communities and climate action. And then we're hoping to kind of use that to lead them along to some more policy work. But I'm not sure how that will actually end up playing out.
All right, thanks. Rachel, then Steve.
Do you have the dates on the January meeting yet?
I believe I do. I can pull them up here.
Okay.
I'll get right back to you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Steve?
I think it's important for us to participate in the Colorado Compact. We really need to present a solid front here in the Roaring Fork Valley, and Aspen is our partner so much in all of the climate action things, and it's important for us to be sharing information with other communities. And even last night at Millie Hamner's town hall meeting, I had a request to share our Pitkin County's climate action plan with the town of Breckenridge. So this would provide a mechanism just for more communication between all the local communities, sharing information, sharing ideas, inspiring each other to, to do the best job that we can on this. So I do have one concern, and that's a manpower kind of concern in terms of that we would need to have one of the 5 of us to participate in this, and we would also need to have a staff person participate. So it's taking on more than we're doing right now. And I've been participating in the phone calls with ACO. Is it ACO? Is that how you?
ACO is the administrator for the compacts, the Association of Climate Change Officers. They're our temporary administrator.
Yeah. But that's something we would need to figure out if we, I would hope it's when we decide to join that. We need to make sure that we have the capacity and community development, and I guess I'd hand that off to Cindy to respond to that.
I think we're already in it. I think we've already committed to being a part of the CC4CA, which we follow on a regular basis and are on several committees. Steve and I are on every committee I think they have. And then this will actually, the compact will benefit us in many ways with the training, so we can actually deliver a better product as we move forward with the climate action plans locally. So, and I'm really excited in the city because a lot of the compact is not actually our climate action staff. It's a really great opportunity to get other departments involved. So our assistant city manager is on one of the calls, one of our engineers is there, as well as somebody from Parks. So it's a really great opportunity to pull in staff outside of Cindy's group if you were looking for ways to spread climate action kind of throughout more of the organization as well.
Yeah, and I see, as Cindy said, as we just approved our climate action plan, which was brought forward by all the different departments that are participating. So there's already a link there in terms of the department heads who are involved in our climate action plan and being able to access and share information that the compact's going to be able to provide to help those departments meet those objectives that have been set forth.
Right. I just see my role as more of a coordination role with all the other departments, but there's certainly no reason why every other department involved with our climate action plan can't have the trainings. So.
Right. Yeah. And they're web-based trainings.
Well, we're talking about having probably both, but right now I think it's Telluride is gearing up for the first training here very soon, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Patty.
So funding, it says approximately, we like those approximate numbers, $2,000 per year. Did we budget that in, or did it came in our 2018? Okay. And it's an actual number, not an approximate number in our budget?
Well, it's an actual number in our budget. I think the actual expense right now is an estimate. Is that right, Ashley or Cindy?
I believe the intention was to get cities and counties to sign on the dotted line and say, yes, we want to be in this. put some amount of funding in for 2018 and then kind of be a part of the steering committee that sets final budget numbers moving forward.
So it'll come through on our budget as an actual number, and then we can adjust it in the future. Okay.
Rachel?
Yeah, kind of a word in caution on the budgets. I've talked with another county that's involved in CC4CA, and they are thinking that they're not going to be involved in the future because of the rate structure. And they were looking at other organizations, say Northwest COG or Club 20. If a number of municipalities are a member within a county, then the county dues are lower, because you don't want those citizens kind of paying twice to be in the organization, both as a resident of Aspen and then as a Pitkin County resident. But that group has not adjusted their rate schedule like that, and they're starting to look at it and feel this inequity between municipals and counties and things like that. And so as you're developing your rate structure, I would really strongly encourage you to consider that, because it gets a little hard to say, well, a county has to put in X, even though 3 different municipalities within their jurisdiction are putting in as well. So
I happen to be on that committee.
Yeah,
and
I know.
We've had extensive conversations about population versus budget, and the intention is at the 2018 CC4CA retreat to have that discussion.
Yeah.
It may not be
I think some of the members who may need to be at that retreat are not going to be members by then, and so there's that issue. And so I'll leave it there. I'm just saying I think it's something that there does have to be some equity in those considerations, and there's also concerns being expressed that the budget's just simply too large and that they're not getting results for the kind of dollars they're putting in. So I just.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Those dates for you.
Thank you.
The symposium will be held in Denver on January 31st, which is a Wednesday, through Friday, February 2nd. So it's a 3 days. I believe day 1 is open to the public, and the next 2 days will be more breakout session focused.
Thank you.
Good, thanks. Greg?
I just wanted to point out that it says for training capacity, commit at least 1 elected official, which means all of us could do that if we wanted to, and assign at least 1 senior staff member. So, and then when it comes down to participation, we assign 1 elected official as the representative, but once again, everyone else can participate at the appropriate times. So this could be, we could all be all in for this.
Okay, Steve?
I'll move to approve the resolution endorsing and joining the Compact of Colorado Communities. And this is the first reading we're doing right now, so.
No,
isn't it?
No, it's just an individual consideration item.
Single reading.
Someone read.
Single reading.
Well, I'm confused the way our thing is
I know,
set up.
I was confused too. But anyway, so we got a motion, it's a single reading. I need a second.
Got it.
Second, any further discussion?
Usually we're confused.
I just want to, again, thank staff. Ashley, thank you so much. That first symposium that you put together under the auspices of Mayor Skadron was unbelievably successful and informative. We got so much information done in such a short period of time. It was really amazing, so thank you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
Thanks, Ashley.
With that, all in favor, it better not go yet. We haven't gotten to vote yet. You never know with this board.
You never know with us.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Now you may go. Thank you.
you.
Okay, now we're going to go on to first reading set for public hearings on November 1st. Resolution authorizing the Pitkin County Office of Emergency Management to accept a 2017 Emergency Management Performance Grant from the State of Colorado, Department of Public Safety, Division of Homeland Security, and Emergency Management for the purpose of funding a portion of the Pitkin County Emergency Management Annual Budget. I hope we're getting a lot of money for this work.
A lot of words in this industry. I'm Valerie McDonald. I'm the Pitkin County Emergency Manager. This is the 4th consecutive year that I've been here with the Emergency Management Performance Grant for the board approval. It's the primary source of federal funding to the state and local counties to support the development of robust emergency preparedness programs. The anticipated amount of the award is $65,000. That's what we've got in the last 3 years as well. The money is used to offset a portion of the emergency management annual budget. Fortunately, at least so far, we have not experienced a lot of man-made or natural disasters in the county. It would be foolish, based on what's going on in the rest of the world, to think that something could not happen here tomorrow. We plan and exercise as though that might happen. We've got our Pitkin County multi-jurisdictional incident management team. We've also got our 15 emergency support function teams that would staff the County Emergency Operations Center during a disaster. I wanted to mention this to you because I know some of you have stopped in to participate in our full EOC activation exercises that we have annually. We do trainings monthly, but we do this big one every year, and it's happening in December. I'm actually planning that in collaboration with John Kenny, Airport Director, and his team. It will be held at our County Emergency Operations Center at Mountain Rescue Aspen this December. If anyone would like more information and like to attend, just let me know. You're familiar with this grant, so I will stop here unless you've got any questions.
Hey, Patty?
You know, I have stopped in at the EOC at X Games. It's amazing. The work that you do, the work that is done, the organization, the logistics to everything is just amazing. The just amount of people who come to the response and who just know what to do. And I'm really impressed, and it's very impressive. So thank you for what you do, and I'm definitely going to support this. And I would like to make a motion to approve the resolution as attached, and I'm not going to read all the language.
Second?
Okay,
Unless you want me to.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Valerie.
you. Very
Why don't
good.
you send
Let me know about that in just a minute.
Why don't you just send us a note, a
Yeah.
memo, so everybody knows what date is.
That would be great.
I will.
Yeah, great, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on again. Next is a first reading set for public hearing on November 15th. This is a resolution approving submission of the final environmental assessment for airport improvements to the FAA for final approval.
Good afternoon. I had to check the clock. Good afternoon to the members of the Board of County Commissioners. My name is John Kinney, Airport Director here at Pitkin County Airport. Immediately to my right, you might recognize a couple of these individuals, Rick Dunkelberg with the National Planning Environmental Firm of Mead and Hunt, as well as Kate Andrus. So as we spool our PowerPoint presentation up here just for a few moments, have just a couple opening remarks in regards to the environmental assessment process. We're very, very excited to be here after a 24-plus month process of the environmental assessment. But I wanted to spend just a minute or two on what an environmental assessment is, what environmental assessment is not, because I think some folks have wanted to have some very substantive dialogue, but the environmental assessment process really isn't formatted that way. The process is handed to us by the Federal Aviation Administration, and it's a very rigid process, and it takes into account 23 or so items. Some have applicability, a few do not, and that is the process that we must study and then come out with the outcome of what are those out of those categorical, would it be greenhouse gases or wetlands or to some limited extent traffic congestion components. But some of the really burning issues have not been able to get to. I applaud and thank the Pitkin County Airport who created this process before my arrival. You really put a community involvement component onto this environmental assessment way above and beyond what the FAA required, trying to draw on the community through a community input committee that had over 51 individuals representing different geographic or interest in the community. Thank them publicly for their time and commitment. It made it a better product, made it a better process. But you also worked in the coffee chats. You also had us going out there talking to the community in public workshops and open forums. So we really had a very, very robust engagement with the community. Got a lot of great feedback that Kate will be going over with you in a few minutes. But those burning questions that the community really wants to have of, okay, do you really have to move that runway? The answer is yes, to meet the FAA design standards. What if you don't do that? That's probably going to be a cessation of the existing scheduled service as we know it today. But if you do that and create that, does that mean larger aircraft? Well, yes, dimensionally, but we don't know from a performance perspective. And the community's like, Those are really the issues that we want to look at. And is that going to allow a 737 type aircraft into this airport? Can you preclude it? And it really bounces into the category of a lot of federal preemptive issues, what an airport can regulate, when an airport cannot regulate. We cannot be arbitrary and capricious and discriminatory, because some folks are saying, let's limit the weight, let's limit the wingspan, and we're not allowed to do those type of things. And this study does not go into those particular components. So we will be discussing that in the next phase before we go into the design and have those very robust conversations with the community. We've asked the airlines for some of those answers, and we just have not gotten the answers from them because they're not quite sure what type of aircraft they're going to be acquiring to replace the regional jet that has started to be retired. So is it the CS-100, which I think is an optimum aircraft for this airport? Is it the Mitsubishi? Is it the Embraer 195, 175 with new engines? So a lot of uncertainty, and that's not a negative. That's just where we are in the evolution of, but we couldn't even get to that discussion without this document and this process that we have before you here today. So we're very excited to be at that point in time. And I will now turn it over to Rick to kind of walk us through where we've been and where we are and what the next steps are in terms of the environmental assessment.
Yeah,
Thank you,
just
John.
let me,
As John said, I'm Rick Dunkelberg.
Yeah, excuse me, just so I clarify what you just said, John. The EA that the FAA requires us to do is very tightly constructed in terms of these are the issues you must address and respond to. What we've done is gone above and beyond that to look at community values, which is really not part of the FAA EA process. Correct.
Yes, we have, and it's gotten us to kind of the next chapters of the discussion, and some of the folks have had a little bit of frustration. It's like watching paint dry, and they really wanted to get to those more substantive conversations, but that's really step 2 in this multi-step process. And just a point on that, George, which you triggered a comment that I failed to mention. Adopting this environmental assessment is not a commitment at this point in time for this body for a go-ahead of build, no build. We either be one of them or both of those type projects, new terminal, relocation of the runway. It's not until you get into the design phase and accept those grants to do those functions. So there still is several more appearances by staff before the Board of County Commissioners on this project. One other thing I did fail to mention, if I could go back real quickly, we wanted to be very, very transparent and do some what-if scenarios on larger aircraft potentially coming into the airport. What type of noise and greenhouse gas impact could that possibly have? So we threw in some what-if scenarios. Unfortunately, the FAA came back and said, unless you have in writing, from a letter, or excuse me, from an airline on their letterhead that says we're bringing this particular type of aircraft in that is not serving the airport today, we're not going to allow you to let that be part of the environmental assessment. There could be just too many what-if scenarios. So that study is available for the community members to read on our webpage, but that's to the extent that you've encouraged us and we've responded to really go above and beyond that standard cookie-cutter kind of cut and dry environmental assessment to really find out the engagement and questions of the community.
Yeah, Patty?
Yeah, didn't we also look into the greenhouse gas issue, and we were also asked by FAA to pull that? I just think the community needs to know that we tried. And
Right, and I'll let Rick.
I want to make sure that the
that's some
community's
recent
aware.
feedback we got from the FAA at the regional level. So I don't know if you're going to address that or if you want to address it now.
Great,
Well, no, you're absolutely right, is that when we scoped the project, one of the issues that this community was very concerned about was greenhouse gases. And so we were allowed to do some greenhouse gas analysis, which the FAA agreed to fund as part of this assessment. Subsequent to that, conditions have changed at headquarters and beyond, and we've now, since there are no thresholds of significance that are nationally recognized for greenhouse gas emissions, we have been advised not to put that analysis in the environmental document. However, as John said, it's been done, it's been completed, and we'll have that on the website available for the public to review.
But we just weren't allowed to put it in the report.
It's from the federal standpoint, that's
Right.
correct.
Thank you.
We were allowed to put in one version of it, the version that the FAA considers reasonably foreseeable, but the what-if scenarios are the ones that were not
Thank you.
able to be put in there.
Very good. Rick, you're up.
Thank you, sir. We've made most of this presentation to y'all before, so I'm going to go through it pretty quickly. But again, I want to set the parameters on what we did, what we included, and then we're going to talk about the comments we received and how we've responded to those comments. And that comment response is already being reviewed by the FAA for consistency from their standpoint, so we can move it forward. Again, just to remind everybody, we have two proposed projects, which John talked about. One is the relocation of the runway to achieve design standards, and the other one is the development of a new terminal building and terminal area development on the east side. As John said, we have no commitments from any of the airlines that we've reached out to get a commitment on the type of aircraft they would fly or whatever city pairs they would engage in. And again, as John mentioned, we are working under a lot of federal preemption restrictions on what the county can or cannot do from a public use airport standpoint. Again, to reiterate, there are no federally defined thresholds of significance, and there's 22 or 23 of those, depending on how you categorize those, other than the wetlands associated with Owl Creek. And that will require some piping and some mitigation and a 404 permit from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And that permit will be applied for once the design, plans, and specifications for the runway are completed, because the Corps wants to see those. I'm just going to turn that. Any questions up to that? Then I'll turn it over to Kate. Okay.
Great, thanks. So last time we were here, we gave you a little bit of a summary on the comments that we received during the public comment period. This time, what we wanted to do, we provided the draft response to comments in your board packets. We just wanted to do a little bit of a high-level response to comment summary for you guys, and then open up for questions. The first category is under the air and noise comments. You know, we got a lot of comments saying, you know, we think that there's going to be impacts to the community, both in noise and air quality. The response to that is the analysis in the document is based on federal thresholds, and there are no significant impacts relative to those federal thresholds. So if there's no significant impacts, the FAA doesn't require any mitigation. It is important to note, though, that we did look at, there's potential non-required mitigation or best management practices that you can look at for these projects. For the terminal design, there's things like looking at hookups for ground power so that the engines don't have to run, preconditioned air. There's elements like that that you can incorporate in on the design phase. So it's not really mitigation, but you can look at it to make things better, you know, down the road. So we did have some comments from the public requesting to look at those types of elements in the design phase. Additionally, you know, we had mentioned last time that greenhouse gas reduction measures were being examined in separate processes like the climate action plan. Another element that's really important to note on this is that the airport can't restrict aircraft from flying in and out of Aspen. It's a public use airport, and it must meet the FAA design requirements and also its grant assurances. We also had some comments about proposed change in the arrival and departure procedures, and this project does not make any recommendations on that. It is really just the relocation of the runway and the terminal project. On the terminal comments, most of them were related to the actual design of the terminal, you know, whether specific features, sustainability elements, whether there's going to be jet bridges in there, stuff like the walkability. That, again, is all going to be dealt with in the design phase. So all the responses to those comments dealt with that. In terms of planning, regulation, and site questions, there were a couple on emergency preparedness. The airport fully meets all the federal mandated requirements for that. and it will continue to do so based on the size of aircraft in the future. Some folks questioned the assumption on losing commercial service, thinking that that assumption was not valid. Everything that we've done from all the planning side, from the air service study through the EA, shows that the CRJ 700 and those smaller regional jets are being phased out. They're not making them anymore. So while we don't necessarily know what exact aircraft is it will be replaced by, they all have wingspans longer than the 95-foot wingspan that's in place right now.
Steve?
Yes.
We keep talking about the commercial aircraft that will be landing if we move the runway over.
Yes.
We have not talked at all about the private aircraft, and what is the trend in the industry in terms of fuel efficiency and noise level and that sort of thing from the private aircraft that might be landing on the new alignment of the runway?
Sure. So the same benefits that you see with a longer wingspan in terms of efficiency, as well as the updated engines that are quieter, you're seeing that in the private aircraft as well. So you generally see longer wingspans because they're more fuel efficient. So I think on the private aircraft side, you will see the similar patterns to what you see in commercial aircraft. Longer wingspans and the updated engines.
Yeah.
Tend to be
in
more
reading
efficient.
the public's comments on the various things, it seems like they were responding to what has been happening in the past, and they're assuming that it's going to get worse in the future. So
Right.
I wanted to know really what will these new aircraft be doing?
Right, and the trend really is toward quieter aircraft. The FAA, last week, just released the Stage 5 requirements, making sure that all the aircraft going forward, I forget the date exactly, but have to meet new Stage 5 requirements for noise, which is one level even higher than what they're at now.
Yeah, it's about 15, let me jump in here.
Yeah.
It's about 15 decibels less than the Stage 3 requirements today. And Kate is right in that at the end of this year, all aircraft over 231,000 pounds have got to meet Stage 5 requirements. And by the end of next year, all aircraft under that weight have got to meet Stage 5 requirements. And that is significantly quieter than anything, than most aircraft flying today.
Okay.
And there's no distinction between commercial service or privately owned general aviation aircraft.
And on that, the significance of that 15 decibels is it's like the Richter scale. 1 + 1 is 3.
Mm-hmm.
So it is exponentially quieter. And it takes about 3 to 5 decibel change for you to discern it with the human ear. Not my ears, but your ears, to be able to do that. So it's going to be noticeably quiet. That is, I had not heard that yet.
Yeah,
that is staggering.
Well, it's getting, just an aside, it's getting to the point now where the airframe of the aircraft going through the air makes more noise than the engines with the friction of the aerodynamics.
So we'll be doing a fly silent, not a fly quiet program next?
Well, that's our goal.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
There were additional comments on the existing and potential intersections. We talked about that a little bit last time. The site plan that we looked at in the environmental assessment does not assume that additional intersection that's on the long-term CDOT plan would be built within the planning timeframe. So that's the response to that question.
Thank you.
Question on the parking and transit options. There were a couple questions about how many parking spots would be included, whether or not there would be integrations with the existing RAFTA system, and potential future transit options that I know that the Valley is looking at. The site plan includes space for retaining the existing number of spots right now. It's just a space constraint. It's recognized that there's a valley-wide parking concern, and I think that's being looked at from kind of a valley-wide level. Additionally, the site plan does include a link for a more intuitive kind of walking experience from the RAFTA BRT station, just to kind of help initiate that link to the transit in the future. Concerns about the whether or not traffic would be impacted. Again, traffic is one of those categories that is traditionally not included in an FAA document. It's not one of the 23 official categories, but we did look at it for this EA, and the analysis showed that there would be no significant impact relative to the level of service at the existing intersections. And then last comment on this one, concerns about light pollution. We looked at the lighting impacts relative to the terminal, found that there's really no significant impact with the way that the topography of the land is. You can really nestle the terminal in there and have some nice shielding with the trees to really reduce any kind of lighting on that side. We had one gentleman with concerns about, as you're driving toward town near the shale bluffs, having some lighting impacts over there. I think if you drive at night, sometimes
I've raised that one before myself.
It can be bright. So a lot of those lights are going to be relocated 80 feet further to the west, which actually might help a little bit on that side, but it's something that the airport can look at further in that final design.
And that lighting is also mandated by FAA.
It is.
Safety regs, so.
Yeah, so there's only certain things that you can do, but you know, particularly with moving it over the 80 feet, there might be some elements of shielding that could be done.
I've always thought hay bales, just some stacked hay bales by the highway side.
On the water quality comments and water resources comments, there were questions about the impacts to Owl Creek and what would be done to mitigate that. As Rick mentioned earlier, that's something that is considered an impact, and it would require a permit with the Army Corps of Engineers in order to do that. It would be removing a wildlife hazard, though, for the airport, so I think that's a positive benefit. And you know, before the project was actually completed, and to get that permit, you would have to work with Army Corps of Engineers to find a mitigation project. They prefer local projects, so that's probably something that we would work with Pitkin County Open Space to find something adequate. And then in the other comments category, which is kind of our catch-all, the Aspen Airport is an economic lifeline of the community. We had several comments that were on the positive side relative to saying, you know, we are very interested in having the runway relocated and keeping commercial service. And then a couple comments requesting to have the runway improvements completed first. The answer to this is the timing of those projects is really going to depend largely on federal funding. As we talked before, there's a higher federal match for the runway project than the terminal project. But that will need to be looked at more from a financial standpoint in the next steps. There was a question on why voters are not allowed to vote on the airport expansion as it affects the small town character. This action requires the approval of the BOCC to submit, but it does not require a direct vote.
But if we change the use of open space, we will need to go back to the voters on that along Owl Creek?
So under the analysis, the projects that are being analyzed in this environmental assessment, it would not require us to use any of that open space. So would not. If at some point in the future a west side taxiway is considered according to our master plan, then it would require that kind of vote if the west side taxiway extended the whole length of the runway.
Just for clarification.
Yeah, so you know, that would be you know, one vote. The other would be if this board decided in financing the airport to use a tax-exempt bond, a revenue bond versus a certificate of participation or other tools that we've used that could require a vote.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then there was one comment requesting more time to comment and thought the notification was inadequate. just a couple highlights on that. We did newspaper ads, emails to the stakeholders, social media and radio outreach, as well as doing an extended comment period of 45 days, which is above the normal 30-day requirement. And we had 2 public hearings and had an online comment forum, just so that we could have anybody who wanted to comment. So then I'm going to turn it back to Rick for next steps.
We've got the second reading scheduled for November 15th, at which point we submit to FAA the resolution. And as John said, this is not a commitment to move forward with the project. It's just a commitment that we agree with the findings in the environmental assessment. And at some point in the future, we may submit funds for design, application for funds for design. FAA will issue its finding. They may issue 1 finding. They may issue 2 findings because we've got 2 separate projects. Depends on how they combine those. And then, John, I'll let you finish up the last.
Thanks, Rick. And then next steps after that, we'll immediately go into the RFP process, request for proposal. With program management, project of this scope, whether it's 1 of them or 2 of them, staggered or sequential or partially simultaneous, either way you slice you really need a program management, a client's representative for this type of a program. So that program management team would ebb and flow, increase, decrease, just based on the complexity of where you are on that project. Immediately after program management, we bring in a program financial feasibility and take a much more of a granular look at where we are in the finances associated with this project. As Kate said, runways have a much higher funding component than that of the terminal building. It's been about 3 years since we met with the FAA last time, so some things have changed. It's been rather fluid with the financing or lack of appropriations from Congress to the FAA, so we want to take that step. And then we go into a design team, whether that be the runway first or the terminal first. Still a little bit of a question. There might be some strategic moves there that we will bring back next year to the board. Then on-call plan environmental, another RFP for on-call engineering, and another RFP for on-call financial. Those last 3 have historically been 5-year contracts, and those are now expiring. So instead of changing horses in midstream, makes a lot more sense, not only for economies of scale, but just to do them all at once and get the team in place to move forward at whatever the development challenges are going to be. Submit the application for federal funds is after the design phase. So that's really the next steps and where we are, but obviously the most important one is that we'll be back before you on November 15th for the second and final reading of the environmental assessment. And great question, Steve, earlier, that also does apply to general aviation, equally so, all these discussion points. So it does mean larger aircraft for the, such as the Gulfstream 650, which has a wingspan slightly over 100 feet, and it does mean larger aircraft for corporate aviation that maybe uses commercial type size aircraft. That's another potential introduction into the airport as well, but all those issues will be studied prior to the design phase in that sequence of next steps.
George,
Yes.
I just want to clarify too that so the public knows that on the 15th of November is our public hearing, so the public is more than welcome to come forward to that hearing and submit comment. So I just want people to know that we will be taking more public comment on the 15th.
Questions for anybody? Steve?
When we send this to the FAA, what do we expect back from the FAA? What is the step the next step that they take with the EA?
The FAA will issue what's called a federal finding, and it will be anywhere from a 5 to 15 page, basically memo back to this body. And what we're hoping for is what's called a finding of no significant impact. And that will outline all the resources we've looked at. And if there are any requirements for mitigation, they will list those in that document. And then that's their final approval of the EA, which is basically good for somewhere around a 3-year time frame. And if the project that they write the finding on is not initiated within that 3-year time frame, then sometimes they will require what's called either an update or a reevaluation of the significant factors which may have changed. And the document then becomes their document. There is about a 45-day time frame of which the public then can respond to the FAA in their capacity of then owning that document and writing that finding.
And the public will be notified of that time.
Yeah, they issue. We as the sponsor will write a notice in the paper, and the FAA publishes that in the Federal Register.
Perfect, just so the public also knows
Yes.
about that.
Any other questions?
No, I will make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve with great pleasure after this lengthy process that we've been through. And the beginning of another lengthy process, approving a submission of the final environmental assessment for the Aspen-Pitkin County Airport to the Federal Aviation Administration for final approval.
Second?
Further discussion?
I'd just like to thank everyone involved, and I'd like to thank the community for their participation, for their comments, for their concerns, and I want the community to please stay on board with this. We have a long way to go, and we really need community input as we move forward.
Great, thanks. So with that, all in favor say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you,
you.
Kate.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Rick.
much.
John. Okay, next is a public hearing. This is one reading. It's an application for a modification of premises to a liquor license submitted by the Aspen Skiing Company for the Sun Deck restaurant.
How are you?
Hello, Patty. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you again.
How are things?
Things are good, and I'll be getting back to you on that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, good afternoon, County Commissioners. My name is Simon Chen. On behalf of Aspen Skiing Company, we are here to request a modification to our liquor license on Aspen Mountain. The modification encompasses our new summer landscaping and also the inclusion of our wedding deck, which is on the western side of the sun deck.
Okay. Jeanette, anything to add?
He said what I was going to say. So.
Sorry, Jeanette.
That's okay. We have some people joining us here at the table today. Amity Prius, who's the executive legal assistant for the ski company and who I work very closely with on all the liquor licenses for the ski company. Jonathan Philman, is he?
He's not here.
He's not here. Okay, David Clark, who is the general counsel for the ski company, and Simon is here. And I think I will just turn it back to him. He's doing well with his presentation. And so
Thank you,
we'll let
Jeanette.
him. Yeah,
Do we have the presentation? Where you can see the...
So does this application for liquor license, does this make any changes to hours of operation, noise, lighting, anything like that?
I'm going to let the ski company respond to those issues. I don't believe there's any issues with that, but I'll let them respond to your questions.
So to answer your question, George, no, it's just more of a, as you see from your presentation packet, it expands to cover the summer landscaping on the front of the sun deck, and then just to the western side, just to cover that wedding deck. We're not requesting any change to hours.
Okay, thank you. Other questions?
So what that means is it just allows people to have alcohol in that new space that's been provided for these events.
That's correct, Patty.
And I just want to make a comment too. As I don't know how many people have actually been to an event up there, a wedding event. I've seen lots of photographs, and it's a beautiful, beautiful place to have a ceremony and to have a little celebration. So I'm truly supportive of this little small expansion to allow that.
Thank you.
Steve?
I would echo that, having been at a wedding reception up there this summer, and everybody's going outside with their drinks to look at the sunset and everything. It's just incredibly beautiful up there, and I would anticipate that your guests would want to be outside a lot of the time, weather permitting, of course. So I totally understand why you're asking for this.
Correct. Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Anybody wishing to make any comments on this? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Rachel?
I just want to thank the ski company and the Sundeck staff for the way they have managed and taken care of their liquor license. I do recall several years back the discussion about the champagne cart being on mountain, and was that going to create danger, and it really hasn't. And so you've managed that well, and similar to both Patty and Steve's comments, I think that this is appropriate for your venue. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. We appreciate it.
So George, I'll make a motion to approve the application for modification of premises of hotel and restaurant liquor licenses submitted by the Aspen Skiing Company.
Second that.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Sorry to take all your
No
words.
problem.
Thank you.
You did a good job.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, next, again, this is a public hearing. These are on second readings. First is a resolution authorizing the repeal and readoption of the bylaws of the Open Space Board of Trustees.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Tenenbaum, the Director of Pitkin County Open Space and Trails. And during first reading, we explained what the bylaws were updated this year by the Open Space and Trails Board. With reauthorization of the program in 2016, it was time to relook at how the Open Space Board works fundamentally, and we needed to make some tweaks, and we worked over several months to really come up with bylaws that the Open Space Board will operate under. And so, there were some minor tweaks that we talked about last time with, basically the standards of conduct and teleconferencing, number of meetings, but we're trying to make the Pitkin County Open Space and Trails Board as efficient as possible, and the realization that the program has changed a lot in the last 27 years, and the board needs to adopt as well. So.
Questions?
Any changes from first reading?
This is a public hearing. Anybody wishing to comment on this? It's like Halloween. All I see are ghosts out there. So we close the public hearing. Steve?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the repeal and readoption of the bylaws of the Open Space Board of Trustees.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you. You guys are cooking today.
And let's see, last is a resolution authorizing the Ute Rockfall Mitigation Supplemental Budget Request.
Yeah, and George, I'll be taking this one today. Connie had a conflict, and so did GR. But this is an item that you've had work sessions about, and also a first reading of this resolution, which is a supplemental request for $35,000 to both evaluate a mitigation technique for loose rocks above the Ute Trail and to implement those techniques. There's two options that we're looking at. One is a scaling option. The other is a netting option. We believe that this appropriation would cover either of those options that are recommended by the firm that we're hiring to evaluate them. This came off cycle, obviously, because we wanted to get the work initiated and hopefully completed before we go through the full freeze-thaw of going into the winter season.
Patty?
I just want to note, too, so the public is reminded that this area is closed, and it's closed for a very significant public safety issue. So please, because there's been a lot of public who have been continuing to use this trail, there's a danger there right now, and we really request that the public observe those signs and do not use the trail right now. On another note, at the Aspen Chamber retreat last week. The Aspen Chamber Resort Association has a great video, and it's focused around people sitting on top of Ute Rock with their dog, and this was prior to the fall rockfall. Have you seen it? It's
Timing, huh?
Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful site, and we're hoping to restore it to that beautiful site again that is safe and in the best interest of the public.
Thanks. This is a public hearing. Anybody wishing to make a comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Bring back to the board.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Okay, we're going to move on to open discussion. John?
Yeah, just a note for the board that I will be out of the office tomorrow and Friday. Rich Engelhardt will be returning. He'll be acting in my place.
Enjoy.
Anybody else have anything on open discussion? There is, I got a note from John Ely yesterday that the River District is organizing a meeting on Shoshone this Saturday from 9 to noon.
Next Saturday.
Next Saturday, thank you, November 4th. Next November 4th. The idea is to have a rep and elected official present. So the question is, would anybody here like to attend?
George, I had asked John if he could ask anyone else because I'm going to be in Denver that Friday dropping my niece off at the DIA. But I just basically emailed John back to say I'd make the commitment to turn around on Friday and come back up and go to the 9 a.m. meeting on a Saturday with the River District. So I'll cover that base. Okay. Unless the weather's horrible. If for some reason the roads are closed.
So let's have a backup in case we don't.
I'll happily back up or plan on it.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that, but I had said I wasn't sure I could.
That's
'cause
great.
I've
Thank
just
you,
gotten
Rachel.
down there that Thursday night.
And I'm not available. I'm out of town.
Yeah.
And we have confirmed for John attending as well as a commissioner.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah,
All right,
he and I
great.
can carpool or work something out.
All right, good, thanks. So if nobody else has anything else for open discussion,
Second motion to go into executive session.
I will accept that. I'll need a statute for that.
It's 4044A and B. Let me pull up the sheet.
Second?
Second, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, Grassroots. So we
Thanks,
will adjourn to the upstairs.
Are we upstairs?
And can we make that in about 15 minutes, George, so we can all